All right, welcomes. If you missed this in class for our first little design, we're going to go over how to design our loaded die using Fusion 360. The first thing you might want to do is make a folder where your initial our tutorial files are going to go. I created a folder called Engineering Tutorials, where I'm going to save my stuff. I actually made a subfolder, but you can put yours wherever you want to. Now, when you start Fusion 360, it's going to give you a blank document, which is what we have here, so we're good to go. Now, when I create things using Fusion 360, I always want to kind of make a plan of attack first. So I sketched out that you guys can look at what I need to do to make a loaded die. Now, the loaded die we're going to try to make is something similar to, let's say, this one. Something similar to this. And if we look at this, the die we're going to make, it has 1, 2, and 3 on in number form on 3 sides, and it has 4, 5, and 6 in dot or pip form on the other sides. It then has our edges. I chamfer them. We can chamfer or we can round them off to make it nice and clean. And I threw some colors on it, made it gold with some extra accents on different sides. And then the letters and the pips are inset into the sides. So that's what we want to try to make. So we're going to make a plan of attack. So if we think about what's the main shape this die is made out of, it's a cube. So we want to start by making a cube that represents our die by making a sketch and then extruding it. Then we're going to place the numbers on the sides. Place the numbers 1, 2, and 3, and then cut them into the die and maybe cut a border on those sides. We're going to place the pips using 3 different techniques on the other sides. We're going to round off our corners, or we can chamfer them. We're going to then, at that point, we'll have a die that's usable. Then we're going to go and actually make ours a loaded die. We're going to cut out some interior space so that our die is not perfectly balanced, that it might tend to roll a certain way. And then at the end, we can change the appearance and make it a nice, pretty color. So I always like doing this first, whether it's on paper or in my head, kind of making a plan of attack of how I can take this 3-dimensional shape and create it in Fusion 360. So here's our plan. So let's go through and do that. So let's go back to our new one, close this off, back to an untitled one. Again, I'm going to first start by drawing my base sketch. Hit the sketch button. Again, we could pick one of our 3 main X, Y, Z, ZX planes. So I'm going to pick the bottom plane here. And I'm going to use the little kind of world view up here and click on top and rotate it so I'm looking straight down from the top. Now to draw this, I'm going to first by drawing a square on the bottom. So I'm going to go to create. I could use this rectangle. I want mine to be centered, so I'm going to use the center rectangle instead. Create center rectangle. Click in, as you notice, my kind of coordinate system showed up when I start drawing. Click in the dead center. It should, when I get close, it should snap to it. And then just drag it out. Now I could just drag it and click somewhere and go back and change the dimensions, but what's nice about Fusion 360 is as you're drawing stuff, if you notice the 42 or 44 on the bottom is highlighted, I can actually type in numbers as I'm drawing and it'll automatically shift the dimensions to be that. So I want to make my cube a 20 by 20 cube. So I'm going to go 20, I'm going to hit tab, that'll drop me to the other dimension, 20, and now I have a 20 by 20 square. Hit enter, finishes it off, zoom in a little bit. Move around the dimensions if you need to. And for now, that's fine for my initial sketch. Just a square. Now I'm going to go back out to my world view here and click home so I can get it in that angle view. And now I want to create the 3-dimensional part of it. So I'm going to drag this. So we talked about a couple ways of making things into 3D, using extrusions and making revolutions. I'm going to use an extrusion. So I'm going to go up here, hit the extrude button. And I only have one thing drawn, so it actually automatically picks it for me. If it wasn't, I'd pick what I want to extrude. And now I can extrude a bunch of different ways. So I can just grab this arrow and just drag it. And if I'm playing around and being artsy and visually changing things, I can just grab this and drag it and see what looks good. As I'm dragging it, again, the dimension lights up, so I could type in 20 to make it a 20 unit size. Again, we're actually working in millimeters here. So that's kind of what I want to do first. Is I want this to be a 20 by 20 by 20 cube, so I would put in 20. Now, this seems to be fine. The only issue is if I rotate this, my drawing plane's in the bottom, and I'm going up in one direction. I don't know where the middle of this is. It'd be nice if my drawing plane was in the middle of this cube, because then I'd have a surface dead center in the middle that I'd be able to use if I want to use it for something. So if you look at the extrude dialog box, there are a couple other options. Where it says direction, it says one side. I could select 2 sides, and that would give me 2 arrows where I could drag one way and one the other way. If I do symmetric, when I drag one, it automatically does the other one. So I could go and drag this along, and for example, I could think, okay, I want to totally be 20. Well, if I go 10 on one side and 10 on the other side, that gives me 20. So I could design it that way. There's also another option under where it says measurement. Right now it's set to half length, so I would be typing in how far I want to extrude it in one of the directions. But if I didn't want to do that math in my head, I could click this and click whole length. And then whenever number I type in, whatever number I type in, it's going to be the full length, and the computer does the subtraction and says, okay, this total length here is going to be 20, where it would be 10 on one side, 10 on the other side. So I'm going to use the symmetric one because it makes my life a little bit easier. And when I'm done, I just hit OK, and now I have a cube. I'm actually going to change the display settings for a second, just so I can see the edges, so we can see a little bit better. So now I have a cube, so I'm on my way to making my shape. So that was my first step. Next step, it says, place the numbers on 3 of the sides. So this is pretty simple in Fusion. I'm just going to go to make a new sketch. Remember, whenever we make a 3D shape, it's usually we make a sketch, and then we do something to that sketch to turn it into 3 dimensions. Sometimes you can use the same sketch multiple times, but here I need to make a new one. So make a new sketch. I'll pick one of these sides, one of the faces. I pick the front one. I'm going to then use my world model here and spin it so I'm looking at it head on. And I'm just going to go to create, and I'm going to pick text this time. And it's asked me, do I want to put it on a path or do I want to just draw it here? I'm just going to draw it here. And what it's asked me to make a text box. So I'm going to click, I want this to be centered on my side. So I'm going to click the top corner and make my text box all the way to the bottom corner. Because that'll guarantee that at least I know where how big the whole size is, and I could center my text based on that. So right now it just gives you some sample things. So I'm going to type in 1. Right now it's left justified and top justified. I'm going to center it and center it up and down. And I have a 1 now right dead center in the middle of this face. And let's change the font to something else. Julian is fine. Let's make it a little bit bigger. 12. And I'm happy with that. Hit OK. Finish my sketch. Now I have a 1 there. So let's repeat the process, this time on our other 2 sides. And you notice to remember what I did last, so it has everything centered still, which is nice. Has the same size as I did, so it kind of remembers that. So I don't have to go back and reset it if I want to continue with the same type of thing. And let's do 1 on the top. Now this isn't the way you're supposed to do your dice, but it's fine. I don't want to do that yet. Let's draw. Did I pick sketch already? Let's get out of here. Let's see what it is. I think I made a sketch by mistake. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, sketch on the top. And we want to, I'm not going to move it this time because I'm doing something simple. So you can still draw on things without having them straight ahead. Sometimes this is nice because you can tell what it's going to look like at an angle. All right, I got my 3 numbers drawn. Oops, where did 2 go? What happened to my 2? Oh, that's the sketch I deleted by mistake. So let's go back and draw that sketch again. Finish this sketch. And I mistakenly deleted my 2 sketch. But that's all right. We can put it back there really quick. And we also said on these we wanted to draw a kind of an inset. So I'm going to go back to my first sketch. Now this is the other nice thing about Fusion is that if you want to go back and edit stuff, you can just go on the kind of timeline down here in the bottom and double click on a sketch. Double click on a sketch. Oh, I never finished the 3. Double click on a sketch. And it brings you back to it. You can add stuff to it. So I can go back in here. I could change this if I want to change to a different number. I want to make that one a 3. I can go back and modify it and it updates my model. But what I want to do is I want to add another rectangle, or in this case an actual square, that kind of comes in a little bit. So I'm going to make this one, actually let's make it 14 by 14. And now I could just drag this around and try to center it, or I could use, here it's probably easiest to use the squares to center this, but I could also give it a dimension. So I know it's 14 by 14, but I want to tell the computer where to place it. So if my whole cube is 20 and this is 14, I want it to be 2 from each side. So I'm going to hit the D button, click on this, and I'm creating a dimension between this edge of the new square and the edge of my cube, and I want that to be 2. And it shifts it over there. I'm going to do the same thing between the bottom and the bottom. And now that doesn't look like it was centered. How big did I make this thing? Oh, it should be 3, not 2. Can't do math today. 20 minus 14 is 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that places it dead center, and I can use these dimensions to control it. There are little tricks we'll see later on of how I can make this so it's, if I change one dimension, it automatically changes the other ones. But for now, this is good enough. This gets it centered, so I am happy with that. I will finish my sketch. I'm going to go back to the 2 and put one there. I'll do this one a little bit differently. I'm going to create my rectangle, but this time I'm going to use the grid structure that's kind of at default here, and I'm going to go across, and it makes it a 14 by 14, and because I use the grid, it's centered. So either way, in this case, works fine. Let's go back and edit to 3. Do that one the same way. So now each side has a number and it has this little kind of border around the number. All right, now we want to extrude them. And this time we're going to extrude them as cuts. So we're going to go in here. I'm going to click extrude, click the number 1, drag it in 2 units. And you notice this time I'll do it for the next one. When I click on the number and drag it in, you notice it turns red instead of turning blue, where if you look at the operation, it's defaulted to cut instead of where if I drag it out, it's going to default to join. So join just means it adds material, cut means it removes material. So I want it to cut, so I'll keep it cut, that's fine. And I'll hit OK. Do it once more for the 3. And now I want to take those outlines and kind of use those and cut those in a little bit too, just to give it a kind of a little effect. But if you notice my sketch disappeared, and that happens sometimes once you use a sketch, it kind of disappears on you because the computer thinks you're done with it and it's trying to help you out. But I'm going to go back and turn them back on. I don't know why it's locked. So I can see them, and I'm going to do another extrusion, but this time I'm going to select the square part instead of the number part. So I'm using that same sketch, and I'm going to go in, but I'm only going to go in 1 on these. Extrude, pick the shape, drag it in, hit enter or hit OK. And now on my sides, now I'm going to turn my sketches back off or just hide them. And now on each side I have the number and I have this little inset border. It kind of makes it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So there's my numbers. I could round these if I wanted to. I'll do one of them just to show you what it looks like. I can use the fillet tool, which rounds edges with a fancy name. And I'm going to click on these corners in here. I could also have done this in my sketch. I don't want to round that surface. So I'm clicking multiple ones and they turn blue. And then I can just grab this arrow and drag it a little bit and it just kind of rounds the edges of my square. So I could do that with all of them. I'm just going to do it for the 3 right now. Now we're going to add our pips. Now these we're going to do, I'm going to show you a couple different techniques using mirroring and using drawing and using patterning. So let's do another sketch on top. I'm going to rotate it so I'm looking at the top. And here I'm going to do the 4. So I'm going to start by drawing a circle. Draw a circle over here. I'm going to kind of just move it around and try to pick a size that looks good. So let me try 4. So 4 seems reasonable. I can maybe go 4.5 or 5. 5 is a little bit big. So 4 sounds good. So I'm going to make it 4 units. And now I got to pick a place for it to be. Now let's see. If this is a 20 by 20, each quadrant here is going to be 10 by 10. So if I want to put it in the center of a quadrant, I can go over 5 and down 5. So I'm going to use my dimensions again. You can do create, create sketch dimension, or you can just hit the letter D. And again, this time I'm going to click on the edge and click on the center of my circle. Look, actually, I was lucky and put it right in the middle. And type in 5, do it one more time, click D, top edge, center of my circle. Make that 5, so now I know that's dead center because this is 10 by 10. And I got one of my pips. Now I could draw 3 more of these, but I'm going to be a little bit lazy And I'm going to use this first one, and I'm going to mirror it to create the other ones. So I'm going to click the mirror button up here. Looks like two triangles. It's going to ask me what do I want to mirror. I'm going to select the circle. I could pick more than one thing. I'm going to select, then it says what's the mirror line. I'm going to select, so I'm going to turn my, so right now I can't select the middle. It doesn't let me jump to anything. But if I turn on my origin, so this button here, this is my like X, Y, and Z. If I turn on my origin, I can now click on one of these origin lines. So I'll click on that one, and it makes a copy on the other side. I'll hit OK. And now I have two circles. Now I want to mirror them one more time, so I'm going to create a second mirror. This time I'm going to pick both circles, and I'm going to mirror them across the horizontal plane. And now I have four circles, and what's really nice about this, if I go back and I want to change the size of this, all of them are going to change together because they're mirrors of each other. If I drew them individually, I'd have to change them all individually, but because they're mirrors, I change the first one, they all change to go with it. So there's my four pip side. Finish that. Let's do a 5 pip side. So I'm going to draw a sketch on top. You might guess, hey, that's very similar to the 4 pip side, and you are true, or you are right. So I'm going to start by drawing one circle. Again, if you didn't type the dimension when you draw it, that's fine. You can always go back and hit D, click on it, and give it a dimension. Let's start with it 4 this time and see what it looks like, because we've got an extra one in the middle. I'm going to give it a dimension from one side. Oops, I want that to be 5. Dimension from the top to there. That to be 5, so it's in the center. And now I'm going to start by doing my mirrors. So I'm going to mirror it across the middle. One more mirror of both circles across the horizontal. And now I'm going to draw, now this one I have to draw, so I'm just going to draw this dead center. It's going to be the same size as the other one, so I'll make it 4. And there is my 5 pip side. Finish that. Got one left. We want our 6 pip side. So one more sketch over here. Now this one I'm going to start by drawing my first circle again. So I'll draw a circle over here. Let's make it 4. I'm going to dimension the first one, so I gotta think of how far from the side I want it to be. So let's see. Probably our 5 is going to be too much because we're going to need 3 of these now instead of just, that wasn't right. Dimension here, center. Get rid of that and do that again. I don't know why that jumped up there. So I want dimension from this edge to the center. There we go. So let's make this 4 this time. And from this edge to the center, make that 4. And we'll start there and see how it goes. So this time I'm going to make a pattern because I want to do multiple things. Now I could just kind of draw another one in the middle, then mirror this, then mirror the whole thing. That would work perfectly fine, but I can see if I can do it in one step. So I'm going to go create rectangular pattern. Click on my circle. Now it's going to ask me how far do you want to go sideways. And I'm going to say, let's see, now I got to do a little bit of math in my head. Now if I drag this, I can possibly get a guess. If you notice as I drag it, it kind of shows, it previews to me what this is going to look like. So if I started 4 from this side, I want to end 4 from that side, that leaves 12 left. So I want to go over a distance of 12. And that should make me even. So if I say negative 12, because the other side it called positive, that didn't work. Distance, negative 12. Where did it go? Let me cancel this for a second. I don't know what's going on. So I want to create a rectangular pattern of this. Negative 12 in that direction. There we go. And now it did 3 of them. I only really want 2, so I'll check that down to 2. And then I want to go in the other direction. In this direction, I can drag it out, and you notice it automatically copies them all. I want to do, let's see, I think negative 12 as well. Let's go down one more, or 12 down. And this time I do want 3 of them. And when I'm done, there's my 6-sided pip. Now I might notice, okay, these are a little bit close. Maybe I want them a little bit closer, so I can go back and edit this dimension. Look at it from the side. Maybe I want to make this 5. Well, now the only problem is I made it 5, but I got to go back and change my pattern a little bit, but that's okay. So if I double click on this little square, it brings you back to that weird looking square thing. It brings you back to my pattern. So I want the distance to be 10 now. So I'll go up here. I'll reset that to 10. Because now I'm going 5 over on each side, and 5. If I minus the 5 on each side, I got 10 left. And then my pattern's updated, and I have my 6 pip side. All right, now I just got to do some extrusions. So again, I'm going to do an extrusion, and now I can actually pick all of these and drag them in one unit. Do this thing. And again, you could also type in, if you say -1, that negative means into the material. Or you can drag it, whichever way works for you. Oops, what did I pick? That was, oh, did I pick the whole surface? Oh yeah, if you notice here, I grabbed the surface by mistake. You can see how it says 5 things selected. I can just click on it and deselect it. Now I've selected 6 things. Let's actually deselect them all. I just want the circles. There we go. And now the main part of my dice is done. I got my numbers on my sides. I actually have a couple finishing touches. Let's go back to our list of what we wanted to create. We cut our text, we cut our borders, we cut our pips using mirroring and using drawing and using patterning. We cut them into the sides. Now we just want to round off the corners and cut out some of the middle and then make it look pretty. So rounding the corners, pretty simple. Go up to the top under Modify, click on the Fillet, and then just click on our 12 corners, our 12 edges rather. I'm just going to go around. Oops, don't want to click on it. If you click on something, you can just click on it again if it's the wrong thing. And then when you do click on things, they will turn blue, so you can make sure they're the right thing. You might notice they're highlighting like bold black as I'm on them, and then when I click them, they turn blue. And now I can just grab this arrow, and I can kind of pull it in. I'm just going to visually do this. I'm just going to drag it in until I like the shape. And if you notice I go too far, it yells at me, because if I start overlapping the things I drew, it gets freaked out and it can't do it. So it yells at me. I get the little arrow meshes down there yelling at me, so I just got to make sure it's a size that's outside. So I kind of like that. That seems good. Now there's a couple other options to the to rounding things, where it says radius type. It says constant and chord length. That really in this case doesn't do anything different. You notice it changes the corners a little bit. That's the only really difference it makes. So again, it's a little bit different aesthetic of how the corners are created. Now it's getting freaked out. So I like the chord length version where the corners are kind of like rolled on both sides like that. They're rolled a little bit farther. You can also change rolling ball or setback. That's basically the same thing as the cornery thing. So these options sometimes will do different things based on how complex your shape is. But this is good for me. Hit OK. Happy with that. I'm actually going to turn my origin, unhide it, or hide it so I won't have to deal with it. Now my last step, I'm just going to make it look pretty. So I'm going to go up to Modify, Appearance. And this will bring up my appearance dialog. And Fusion has a bunch of materials saved in here. So if you want to make yours a certain thing, you can just go and find your materials. So let's say I want to make this a metal die. I want to make it brass. I can just, it has all the settings for that type of material already built into here. So I already have polished brass. Let's say I want to make it out of, I don't know, old brass. So if it's something you haven't used before, you have to click this little arrow and it'll download the actual texture file. It takes a second. And then if you want to use it, look up at the top where it says bodies. So this, if I use this now, it's going to color my entire thing this color. If you do faces, it's only going to color the face that you click on. So I'm going to do the whole body first. I'm going to make it this old brass. So I just drag it on top of the body. Let go. It turns to this old kind of looking brass color, this beat up metal brass. And then if I want to color some faces, let's go back. I want to add some paint to it maybe. I'll go back and let's look at, I don't know. Let's throw just some paint on it. I'll do some metal flake paint. And I'll do it in, I don't know, what colors have I used? I haven't used any of them. Let's do blue. So I'll download that. Now I'm just going to make these faces I'll drag it. Oops, I don't want to do the whole thing. I'm going to click the face, drag it onto the face, and it's going to turn that. So I'll make the numbers this blue color. I'll make the other faces red since we are in Somerville. Why not? Just remember, the first time you use the color, you have to download it, but once you've used it, it stays there. And like that. Close. And now my dice is almost done. So it looks pretty. I forgot the step of making it illegal and loading it up. So now if we are making a regular dice, it's done. A regular die, it's done. Now I want to make it illegal. So I'm going to do one more trick. I'm going to add a plane because I want to, actually I do have a plane right in the middle. I want a movable plane that I can kind of adjust to make my die roll whatever way I want to. So I'm going to, under construction, I'm going to select a plane. It's going to tell me I'm going to make an offset plane, which just makes a plane parallel to some other surface. So I want to have this always roll a 6. So I'm going to put 6 up. I'm going to click on that surface. And it made a plane, and I can drag it, and I can drag this plane, if I rotate, anywhere in this thing I want. So I'm going to put it, let's say, like a little bit below the middle. So down there. And hit OK. And now I'm going to use that plane to draw a shape, and then I'm going to remove material all above that plane. So I'm going to draw a new sketch. I'm going to click on that plane. To do that, I'm going to hold down the left mouse button because the plane's like inside of it, and it's not going to let me. It's going to make me select the face first. So if I hold down the left mouse button, I can then, it gives me the choices of different things that are on top of each other. Select that plane. I'm going to rotate it so I look down from the top. And I'm just going to quickly draw a center rectangle inside here that doesn't go all the way to the edge, but goes kind of close to the edge. So, I don't know, like right there is fine. For us, hit finish. I'm then going to extrude that. But it's still inside, if you notice, because I just made it and it was still selected. I didn't have to select it again. It auto-selected it for me. So this is actually inside. So if I just drag this up a little bit, it's going to actually remove material inside of my die. And what this is doing, it's making the top of the die lighter. So if I did roll this, it would have a tendency to have the heavy side down. So I'm doing that. It's set to cut. Hit OK. And now you can't really tell, but inside of my die, there's material missing. And if I do let's change the view to wireframe so I can see inside of it, you can kind of see that there is, it's hard to see, but right there's a little square that's empty space inside of it. Let's go back to regular because it looks prettier. Just regular shaded. And we are done. And we have a nice custom design die with numbers on 3 sides and pips on the other 3.